guys, it's Cindy Lietz, your polymer clay tutor. In today's studio tip, I'm going to teach you how to hand sand polymer clay. Now, I've been teaching this method to my paid tutorial members for a really long time now, and I just recently realized that I didn't have a sanding video in my free video, so I thought I would do that for you today. Now, I'm just going to be using automotive sandpaper today. You can use all kinds of different types of sandpapers and polishing papers and power methods and stuff. But today I'm just showing the automotive paper and hand sanding. And another day I'll show you some of the other techniques that you can do. Now you can also buff your polymer clay, but I'm not going to be covering that today. We'll be doing that in another video as well. Now, in a previous video, I showed you the differences between an unsanded piece of polymer clay and a sanded piece. These are two different ones that were not in the video, but I thought I'd show you these so you could see the difference. This one here is unsanded, and this is sanded, and there's quite a difference. And especially on any of the smooth techniques, ones that have mica powders in it or any of the pearls or metallics, they really do way better if you sand and buff them. Not only do they feel better, but the colors look better, they come alive, and it just really makes your piece look more professional. And I mean, a lot of people don't like to sand. I actually really love it. It's a zen kind of thing. You get some time to spend with your bead, make it look great. Now, another problem that often people say is, I tried sanding, it doesn't work, and here it just leaves it all scratched and makes it look worse. And the problem is, now I've got a piece of baked black Primo clay. It's just a flat piece, nothing exciting about it. But I showed what happens if you use the wrong grit of sandpaper. This is what a lot of people will do. They'll go out to their wood shop, and they grab some sandpaper. Obviously this one is extremely coarse, but they think they found something super fine like these ones here, and they sand away on their piece, and this is the kind of scratches that you're going to get in your piece. With polymer clay, because it's such a soft material, you need super high grit sandpaper. Most of the woodworking sandpapers, I mean, they would consider a 400 grit sandpaper a super high, super fine finish. In automotive sandpapers, though, they need a different type of material. They have a different type of finish, and they go to a much finer grit. So I've got a collection of different automotive sandpapers here. I got these at my Canadian Tire, but you can get them at like your Walmart often, or in any place that has an automotive department, you know, that you can do body work in or any of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so here's the different ones. These are made by 3M. There's other ones available, but these are great because they are wet or dry sandpaper. They can handle being in water. This is 220 grit, and this is as coarse as I would ever want to go. And if Doug can see it up nice and close, it's still a pretty fine grit, way finer than something like this. So, but 220 is something that you would use if you were shaping a piece. I would start with 220 if I wanted to get out these, if I wanted to make the edges on here smooth, and if I wanted to get out, well, actually these scratches were probably made by something around a 220 grit. Then, so you're not going to need that unless you're just shaping. 400 is often where I start. It's pretty fine, but it's still a pretty coarse grit. 600 grit is the next one you'd go to. Sometimes it's not available and you can only find 800. 800 would be your next one after that, and as you can see, the number gets bigger as the grains get finer. And then I have found at my local store up to 1,000. You might be able to even find 1,200. I think the next one is 1,500. Then they have a 2,000, a 3,000, sometimes a 4,000. That's if you're really lucky. But these ones here will give you a really good basis to do any of your polymer clay projects with. So I'm going to sand this one and fix it. Now, what happens is the way sandpaper works is it's got all these little grits. It's easier to see on here. But basically what they're doing is these coarse grits scratch little gouges in your surface. The finer you go, the finer the scratches become. So in order to erase these deeper scratches, you need to go with a little bit finer coarse grit. I'm going to start with my 200. In a previous video, you might want to check it out. I made some sanding pads with my different sandpapers there and some craft foam. So I'm going to use those today to show you how to use them. If you don't have them, then you would just grab your sandpaper like this and just put it in the water and fold it and rub it. But these make it great to work with. Okay, so I'm going to start with the 220 grit. I have some cool water. The colder the water, I mean, it doesn't have to be super cold, but cold water works nicer with polymer clay because it keeps the polymer clay stiffer. If you're using really warm clay, it can warm it up and make it more floppy. But I like to work with cool clay or cool water and a drop of dish soap. And that just helps keep the sandpaper clean and make it more efficient. And all you have to do is get your sandpaper wet, and then you need to sand your piece. Now, 220, like I said, is pretty coarse, but we're gonna see if we can erase those scratch marks. To start off with the 220, and then I'm gonna move on to the 400 pretty quickly. So let's just move on to the 400. Now you can go in little circles, whatever you want. There's some people that are very picky about that. It doesn't matter. Polymer clay doesn't have a grain like wood does, so that part doesn't matter. You're going to get little swirls in it the coarser the grain is. Let me just dip this and wash it off and show you what's happening so far. Now, as you can see, those scratch marks are pretty much gone. Now, it feels pretty smooth to the touch, but if I was to buff it at this point, it's not going to give a very high shine because the light is bouncing into the little tiny microscopic scratches. So what I would do is I would continue with the 400 for a little bit and then move on to the next one, which is 600. And I wrote it on the back here. Now I'm not gonna worry about, there's a little divot in the center there, or a little nick in the center of this piece. If I really wanted to get rid of that, I would start with the heavier grit and keep going the coarser grit, go right down until that was gone, and then come back with these other grits. Okay, so that, oh, you can see it already, it feels great. It just feels smooth and buttery. Now I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go to an 800 grit, and you can kind of tell, like people always ask, well, how long am I supposed to do this? Well, until you're done. And that's kind of hard to say, but you can kind of, if it's really working hard, you can kind of hear it. Then it still has some clay to remove. But as it starts getting smoother and smoother, it'll sound a little quieter, and you can feel it. Now, you can skip a grit if you want to, but I find it's just each of the grits do their best work, so you might as well use them. Because if you make a big jump in your grits, what happens is you're using a super fine little scratcher to erase deeper scratches, and it's just going to take longer, but it is possible. All right, this is getting pretty good, I can tell already. Now, what will happen, because you haven't done any buffing or anything else, it'll have a bit of a matte finish, but it will feel amazingly smooth. If you were to put a gloss finish on this, you wouldn't even have to buff it first. You could just put any of your gloss finishes on it. You could also wax it with Renaissance wax. You can check out some of those other videos. But that simple sanding will give you a really, really lovely finish. And you'll be able to see it really well on something like these pretty beads here. So this process is really simple. You just take your time. You're basically each step of your grit, as you get smaller and smaller and finer grains in your grit, the number goes up, and you're basically removing the scratches of the previous layer. If you don't do a good enough job and you get far along in your super fine grit, you'll see a big scratch from your earlier grit. Now, if your piece is really nice to start off with, you may not even need to start at anything very low. You could start at a 400 or a 600 grit because you're not trying to fix any flaws. But if you've got fingerprints or dents or scratches or fingernail marks, that kind of thing, you're going to want to start at a 400 grit at least. If you're trying to shape the piece, then you're going to start at either 220 or a 320, something like that. So I hope that clarified the sanding process for you. And stay tuned. There'll be more videos on buffing and all kinds of things and different types of sandpapers and things that you can use. All right. If you like this video, let us know. If you have suggestions for other videos, techniques that you don't understand, products you'd like me to demo, anything that you would like to learn more about polymer clay and we don't have a video on it yet, then make sure to leave suggestions in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We've got lots of really cool videos that I'm sure you're going to want to check out. All right, so we'll see you later, and bye for now.